Hello first grade, so today we are going to explore different medias and create many different dots on our paper based on the story, The Dot. Our learning objective is we will know our role within the art room and our school community. So we're going to work together as a community of artists to use our materials respectfully and responsibly, and we're also going to work as a community of artists to put the supplies away in the proper place. So the first thing you're going to start with is a large white piece of paper. You need to write your name and the day you have art. Day A, day B, day C. You're going to flip it over. And I'm going to give you 3 different size circles, a small, a medium, and a large circle. And you're going to draw these, trace these randomly across your paper. They should not touch or overlap each other. So you can start wherever you like. You can start down in a corner, start in the middle, and work your way around. It's completely up to you. But you need to trace these very carefully. And when you're finished tracing them, the circle on your paper should look like the circle that's in your hand, the circle pattern. It doesn't matter how many medium, how many small, or how many large circles you have. I would just like you to make sure you have some of each size. So don't trace everything, filling your paper with the large circle, or the whole paper with a medium circle. Use a variety of different sizes. And notice how my circles are close together, but they are not touching or overlapping. There's a very small space right there between these 2 circles. So it might be really a small space, but as long as they're not touching, that's okay. Now the reason we don't want these circles touching is we are going to cut these out when we are finished. Now as you get about half your page filled with circles, look and see. I have a lot of medium circles, but I hardly have any small circles. So I'm going to trace some more small circles here, taking my time. This one here is a little bumpy. I didn't do a very good job, so I'm going to erase that part of the circle, lay my pattern back down, and trace that edge, just so that it looks more like a circle. Neatness matters, and this part does not need to be rushed. Also make sure none of your circles run off the edge of your paper, that they all fit within the paper itself, that you don't have it hanging off. And as you get to where your paper is almost completely filled, you might only be able to use the small circle to fill in those remaining spaces. Alright, so now I have a paper filled with circles, none of them touching or overlapping each other, and none of the circles running off the edge. So now we are going to experiment with a variety of different medias. And media in art is the art supplies that we use. So the first supply we're going to start with are crayons. Those are the most basic. You've been using crayons since you were in preschool probably, and even before you were in preschool. And I just want you to experiment with them. Pick a circle, use a variety of different colors. Think about the dots in the story and Vashti and what they created. What is in the shape of a circle. If you have a crayon that doesn't have any wrapper, then you could use the side of the crayon. Like this crayon doesn't have any wrapper, I could use the side of the crayon and experiment with what that looks like. You can do designs, different kinds of lines. So you could do thin and thick lines. So here I have a thicker line. Now I could do a thinner line inside. Again, keeping with the circle design. I could do a zigzag line going around. That almost looks like a flower. And you can use crayon on all of your circles or just a few of your circles. I'm going to do some straight lines that cross over each other. Then maybe I'll do a curved line around it. So now I've got a zigzag, I've got thick and thin, I have straight and curved. Whatever you can think of to add some design and some interest to your circles, your dots. So I want you to experiment with crayon. Notice that not all of my circles have something on them with crayon. but I have tried different types of lines, and maybe you could even just take your crayon and color most of one of your circles in. Maybe you color the outline and then fill it in all the way with a solid color, and then you could try a different media or a different color on top. So that's one, and then I could change and try a different color on top and see if that will work. And since I chose a dark color to go over the top of the crayon, that seems to be working just fine. Okay. The next media we are going to experiment with are colored pencils. So each table, big tables, you're going to get 2 paper towels. Skinny tables, you're going to get 1 paper towel. And then on each paper towel, you're going to get a pencil sharpener, because when you use colored pencils, they need to be sharpened to be able to be used. So you're going to pick a color. Now, if it's already sharpened, then you're good to go and you can start using it. If it's not sharpened, you're going to want to use the pencil sharpener. So you're going to have to share with your table mates. The pencil sharpener has 1 large opening and 1 small opening. Our pencils are small, so they go in the small opening. You're going to hold and push the colored pencil in and twist at the same time. So I'm pushing and twisting so that I can sharpen this pencil. And see how the shavings come out the top of the sharpener? That's why we have the paper towel. So we don't get the shavings all over our artwork, and we don't get the shavings all over the table. And then you can just shake the shavings onto the paper towel. Now I have a beautifully super sharp colored pencil. And colored pencils are great for details. So I'm going to go back to some of my circles that I've already done. And I'm going to add some details. And I'm using the tip of my sharpened colored pencil. I could try to use the side by holding the pencil this way and doing the side of it. And maybe I have to turn my paper. There's no rule saying the paper has to stay still. You can turn it. So colored pencils are typically used for lots of small details. They're not used to color in large areas because they're just so small. It would take you forever to color something in with a large area. It would take you forever to color in with a colored pencil. Plus you'd have to sharpen and resharpen it as it got dull. Now here, what happened is the tip of this colored pencil got stuck inside the sharpener. So I'm going to take the colored pencil and pop that out, and it came out and landed right there. And now I'm going to continue to sharpen, and hopefully that doesn't happen again. Okay, shavings go on the paper towel. Pencil sharpener goes back on the paper towel. And I'm going to, maybe I'll try to color on top of crayon to see if that works. So now I'm coloring on top. I can kind of see what I've colored there. It's not very dark, but it does work on top. So I want you to mix the media as well. I want you to try other medias on top of and next to different media. So I've done crayon, and now I'm doing colored pencil, and I just did colored pencil on top of crayon, and that seemed to work. Here, maybe I'll use the colored pencil to fill in this small circle. It turned out nice. Maybe, let's see, a different color. So that's what you're going to do with colored pencil. And notice again, I haven't done all the circles with it. I've done a few. I can always go back and use the crayons again to fill in some of these other circles, and I can come back and do the colored pencils. So after we experiment with colored pencils, the next media that we're going to experiment with is, and I'm going to stick some small skinny markers and some thicker markers out on your table. And I'm sure you've used marker before. Lots of people just love to use markers. So the skinny markers are a lot like the color pencil. They're good for little details. They're not good to color in large areas. So if I wanted to color in this circle in the middle with this skinny marker, that would be okay. But if I tried to color in this whole big circle with this skinny marker, that would take forever. And again, I'm mixing the media within the circle. This one, actually all of these have all of the media I've used so far, except for this one, and I'll just add some marker on top of crayon and see what that looks like. And then we also have large markers. And the great thing about these large markers is they are chisel tip markers. Chisel tip means they have this angle because you can use this part where my thumb is, the wide part, for wide lines, and then you can turn it and use just the pointy part to make skinny lines. So I'm going to use the wide line first just to show you. So I'm using this diagonal to go around the circle. I need to turn my paper, and then to do a skinny line I use the pointy tip of it. Okay, so after we experiment with marker for a little while, then we are going to try. Now, oil pastel look like crayons, thick, chunky crayons. The great thing about oil pastels is they go on real thick and velvety, and you can smear them. If I take this color here, purple, and I just color real lightly with it, it kind of looks like crayon. All right, but if I take this and I apply heavier pressure, it gets darker and it looks velvety, where crayon doesn't ever look like this. Crayon kind of always looks like what you see here, but this gets real thick and velvety. Then another thing that you can do with oil pastel that you cannot do with crayon is you can smear it. So now that I've put a nice thick coating on, I'm going to take a paper towel, wrap it around my finger, and I'm going to pull from the outer edge of the circle into the middle. And see, you get this lighter purple inside by smearing it into the inside of the circle. Now if you go back and forth like this, it'll create a different effect. It'll look different. So I want you to try smearing the colors. I also want you to try overlapping the colors. So I'm going to take and color this blue. And then I'm going to take this pink and color on top of it. And you can try different color combinations. Some color combinations are going to make an ugly color like a brown or a black or a gray, and some are going to make a pretty color. So the pink made it a light purple mix, and I'm going to add some red here on top of the blue, and it's creating more of a purple. And then I can take my paper towel, find a clean spot. I don't want to keep using the same spot because that'll mix those colors together. So find a clean spot on my paper towel and smear these together. Now the neat thing about oil pastel is it resists paint. It resists the watercolor paint. So I want to show you what will happen if you do a design with oil pastel and then come back and add watercolor paint on top when we paint. I think this might be a crayon mixed in with the oil pastel. Yes, let me see. Yeah, it doesn't smear. So this is a crayon. Let me get a different. Crayons will do similar effect too. So now I've created a nice design in the circle. When it's time to experiment with the watercolor paint, I can take the watercolor paint and paint right on top of this circle. So here's my circle with the crayon and oil pastel. And what this is called is a crayon oil pastel watercolor resist. So I'm going to pick one color, and I think I'm going to pick this light orange. I'm going to get a puddle of water on top of it, just like I'm supposed to. I've got a big paintbrush because I'm going to paint the whole circle orange. Just gently rub that water, swirl it around on top of the yellow-orange color, and now I'm going to paint right over the top. And you can see the crayon and the oil pastel just push that watercolor right off of the top of it and says, no way, you're not covering me up. And then you can paint right over the top and still see that design that you created with oil pastel. So now if I take this paint and I try to paint over the center of this circle, is it going to cover up that orange circle? Nope, that orange circle just pushes it off and says, no way, get off. And so that's called a crayon or oil pastel watercolor resist. It's resisting the water and saying, go away. So you'll have a tray of watercolor. These are brand new watercolor paints. I refilled them completely, but you may never see a brand new watercolor tray because other students have used it, and that's okay. But this is what they look like. They're little ovals that have paint sitting in them. And right now the paint is hard. I'm touching it with my finger, but I would never want you to see you touch them with your fingers because they could be wet and then you'd get paint all over your fingertips. But I know these are dry because these are brand new. So what you're going to do with watercolor paint is you take your paintbrush, you get it wet, and then you pull it across the edge of that oval shape. Dip it in the water again, pull it across the edge of the oval shape, dip it in the water again, pull it across. So now I have a puddle of water sitting on top of this pretty blue color, and I gently move the water around. As I do that with my paintbrush, the water changes to the color that it's sitting on, and it becomes watercolor paint, water paint. And so now you can paint and try the watercolor paint and see what you think of it. Sometimes you can have a lot of water. So let's see, I'll paint this circle in with a lot of water and just a tad little bit of paint, and you get kind of a lighter color. Or you can get a darker color by having more paint on your paintbrush, and then you get a darker color. Now, I shouldn't see anyone ever trying to take their paintbrush, jab it into the oval, and try to scoop the paint out of there. It's always the water. The water always just sits on top of the color, and then you move that water around on top of the color with your paintbrush. You're not pushing it down to the metal part of your paintbrush. You're keeping it up on its bristles, up on its tippy toes, and then you're painting in the water. You're painting with the water. You're using the water. You're not using the paint that's under the water. Sometimes that paint under the water gets really wet and sticky, and you can actually scoop it up out of there, and that is a big mistake because straight watercolor paint that you're using, not the water, but you're using the sticky paint that's underneath, when you paint that on your paper, it's super dark and it will always stay sticky like glue. And then when I stack your papers up for you to take them home with you, the person's paper that's on top of yours will get stuck to that paint, and when I pull the papers apart, the papers might rip, and you might also have paper stuck to the top of one of your artworks. So I want you to go ahead and experiment with the watercolor paint using just the watercolor, and I will have two paintbrushes for you. I'll have a smaller paintbrush like this one, and I'll also have a larger paintbrush so that you can get thick and thin lines, just like with crayons and markers. You get thick and thin lines. So now I've got a nice thick line of watercolor paint right here. Can rinse that off, get my smaller paintbrush, and do a thin line inside. All right, and we are going to experiment with one other paint. That is Tempera Cakes are liquid paint that's been dried and hardened into a circle that kind of looks like a cake, the bottom of a cupcake. And when you use these types of paints, you use a stiff bristle brush. So the watercolor brushes that we use will have a green or red handle like this, but for the Tempera Cakes, we'll always use the brown handled paintbrush. And it's a stiff bristle brush, which means the bristles on the end are pointier and stiffer than these for the watercolor. The watercolor is softer. So you're going to pick a color, and then you're going to swirl around on that color. Now, it's a lot like watercolor, so if you have a lot of water, you're going to get a light color. If you've swirled around a lot and you kept swirling and swirling and swirling and swirling and swirling, you're going to get a darker color, a heavier, more opaque, not see-through, but solid color. And with this paintbrush, you can get two types of lines with this paintbrush, thick and thin. So if I take this paintbrush and I hold it this way and I paint this way, I get a thick line. I rinse my paintbrush off. I'm going to change colors, swirl around, and now I'm going to show you how to get a skinny line. a thin line. And so before I held my paintbrush like this. So now I'm going to hold my paintbrush like this. So it's the skinny part of it, keep it up on its tiptoes, and I will get a skinny line. So this is much skinnier and thinner, a thin line, as opposed to this thick line that I did here. You also can't push down with it. So if I hold it for skinny, but I push down, it's still a pretty wide line like that. So I'm holding it like a skinny paintbrush, but I'm pushing down too hard, and so I get this thick line. But if I keep it up on its tiptoes like it's a ballerina, and it's dancing on my paper like in the tiptoes, I get a skinny line like that. Okay, so I have shown you all of the media, and as you work and experiment with the media, when you get closer to the end, you might notice, okay, I have a couple circles I haven't done anything in. I have a couple circles I need to add a little bit more to. And that's when you can kind of go back and use the other media again. But remember, no marker on top of any paint or water areas. So this is paint. Even if it's dry, no marker on top of that. That ruins the markers. And remember, we're learning to be a good art community and use the material safely and respectfully so that everybody else in the art room has access to these same supplies. So now I'm going to go back and add, and making sure not to use marker. And then you know what? I may take the markers away at this point and say no one can use markers because I don't want anyone to make that mistake and ruin the markers. So I might take the markers away and leave you just with the dry media and the paint for you to finish filling these in, making them a little bit more finished. This one doesn't look finished because it just has some squares and it's got this open. This one here doesn't look finished. All right. I might be able to say this one's finished, but as an artist, I want to add more to it. I might say this one's finished, but as an artist, I'm going to add more to that too. I want you to add lots of detail and stop. Now this yellow paint's starting to dry. I can then take a darker color and either draw over the top of it with oil pastel, crayon. I could try colored pencil on the top of it, or I could try watercolor paint or just a different color of Tempera Cakes right over the top of that with different designs. It's up to me. I'm the artist. So now I'm going to continue to work on this until all my circles are finished. So the last step for the dot assignment is to cut each of these circles out very neatly. So this is a really large piece of paper and it might be hard to cut out a circle from a big piece of paper. So what you could do is just carefully cut around and cut a circle off, and then use the cut it from a smaller piece of paper, and then cut right on your pencil line. And when you cut a circle, it's easier to keep your scissors going straight forward. So my scissors are always going to be going this way. And then to slowly turn your paper. Open your scissors. As you close your scissors slowly, you're turning your paper slowly, so that I can try and stay right on that pencil line. And to make sure when I cut it out, it is a circle. It shouldn't be a wobbly shape. So when you're cutting, you need to take your time and make sure that each shape that you cut out is actually a circle. Now it's harder to cut out a circle if you're going to go like this and turn your scissors. It's hard to cut out a neat circle. So if you keep your scissors straight and you just turn the paper slowly, you can get some nice circles cut out. So I'm going to cut these circles out, and then I'm going to show you how we can layer them. Alright, so now that I have all my circles cut out, all my dots cut out, I'm going to layer some of them. You don't have to layer all of them, but I would like to see you layer some of them. So we traced small, medium, and large circles. And the reason we did that is so that we can take a medium and put it on top of a large circle, and then we can take a small and put it on top of the medium circle. And I want you to play around with your combinations and see what you like. Alright, I think I kind of like this combination here. So when you have a combination that you like, you're going to take your medium circle, you're going to flip it over and put a frame of glue on the back, and you're going to glue that to the middle of the big circle, and then you'll pick up your small circle, put a frame of glue on the back, and glue that to your medium circle. And that's one way that you can glue and assemble your circles, your dots, and your layers. Another way, you could do pop dots, which make them stick up and be 3D. So if you look at the side of this, it's very flat. Very flat. It doesn't stick up at all. So let me show you how you can make this stick up. So I'm going to have little bits of cardboard for you to get, and you'll need 2 pieces. So what you'll do is you'll put a dot of glue in the middle of the big circle, and you'll put down a cardboard piece, I call them pop dots. You'll put another dot of glue on top of the cardboard, and then you will put your medium circle down. Then you'll put a dot of glue in the medium circle, glue your cardboard down, put a dot of glue on the cardboard, and glue your small circle down. And then what this creates is, it's a pop dot, so it makes it stick up and be 3D. So if I turn this, you can see how these stick up off of the large circle. So they stick up like a sculpture. And then this one, compare them. This one is very flat, and this one sticks up and has some depth. Alright, and like I said, you don't have to overlap and layer all of them, but I'd probably like you to do about 3 or 4 of them. And you don't have to do large, medium, and small. You could take a medium and put a small on top. Put a dot of glue, cardboard, another dot of glue, and you could just do a medium and a small to pop up and show depth. And you can keep some of them like this. So I like this one, so I'm not going to add anything. This has a lot of detail too, so I don't think I'm going to add anything. But these, maybe I want to add a circle on top, like that. So I get a dot of glue, cardboard, dot of glue, medium. I mean small on medium. So, alright, so then when you have your circles all complete, then you will give them to me and we will assemble them into a collaborative piece. So we're a community of artists working together to create a collaborative piece of artwork. Good job, first grade.